Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television, from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
Elder law attorney with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen joins us today on Helping Seniors TV for a talk about trusts and how they really can help you in your estate planning.
I'm Kerry Fink with Helping Seniors of Brevard. Welcome to Helping Seniors TV on behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, and our entire team. So glad to have you with today. I think you're going to really find a lot of value in today's program and the topics we're going to talk about, because the topic really today is all about trust. And we're going to start off at a 30,000 foot overview level, because if you're like me, you've heard the word trust and it just conjures up, for me anyway, it conjures up somebody with like ridiculous amounts of assets. They're trying to figure out how to structure everything the right way. And does it really have much to do with the average person? And our person that's going to be helping lead us through this conversation today has really said, listen, if you have any kind of property, this is probably a good idea. And so we should have a real good explanation and a good starting point so that we can leave this program with a better understanding. As you know, our goal here at Helping Seniors of Brevard, we often kind of like half jokingly say, this is about getting your ducks in a row. But what we really want to do, as Joe Steckler has talked about literally from the day he founded Helping Seniors of Brevard, is we want to create a place where you can develop your own aging plan. So you can look at your own particular circumstances, the things you want to accomplish as years come by, and then let's make that happen. And so what a great opportunity is to have this conversation today. We have Tyler Runte with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. You guys are elder law attorneys, and this is what you do day in and day out. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And yes, this is what we do all day, every day. Estate planning, that's where it is. You know,
I, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, I hear this word trust, and you know, I jokingly talk, I don't know if you remember or heard of the TV show Beverly Hillbillies, and they talk about, you know, they moved to Beverly, swimming pools, movie stars, and that's typically who we think. You know, people, when they talk about estate planning and they talk about trust, you're thinking about people who are like very wealthy. But as you were schooling me just before the cameras were rolling, this really applies to just, if you own anything, this now starts to apply to you, right?
It does. So I think a common misconception is that you have to have a lot of money or you have to have a lot of assets, several bank accounts or pieces of property for a trust to apply to you. And that's not the case at all. A trust is really a valuable tool if you have anything. If you have a bank account holding $10, it can be a valuable tool. So I think that that's becoming more and more common. People are realizing this because it's being talked about more. But I think, you know, several years ago, if you heard the word trust, your mind automatically went to, well, I'm not a multimillionaire, so that doesn't apply to me.
So I guess the question, even thinking about that, is then, you know, if you even get a concept of a trust, which I'm going to come back and I want to ask you to just help me or help our viewers if they're not familiar with the terminology, just so we understand what a trust is. But then, you know, it's like once you get past that, you have all these other terms that go with it. Is it revocable? Is it irrevocable? All these complicated words. I know you know how to parse it, but help us get a sense of it.
Right, so that's why we're here. Yeah. We're here to help, because it certainly isn't common sense. And we've been educated to know what those terms are to help you along this path, to make it as simple as possible. We actually have fun doing this. So, people can come to us and feel comfortable, and it doesn't have to be this scary sort of thing. But certainly, so a trust is basically a document that creates a vehicle for your assets to be placed in, with language on how that should be distributed when you pass away. Okay. So you have a trustee of the trust. Usually the trustee while you're living would be yourself. So you are the trustee of your trust. And then you name a successor. So when you pass away, that person is in charge of distributing your assets as you wish. You are the grantor, as we call it, so the creator of the trust, and it holds your assets. So it's really just a vehicle that transfers property when you pass away.
Okay. Well, because that was where I wanted us to start, was to have you help me understand, like, if somebody, maybe you have your house in your name, or your house is in your name and your spouse's name, or then you have a bank account held a certain way, or maybe you have some stocks someplace or something like that. Are those items that go into a trust?
Yes, absolutely. So kind of a breakdown of the way it would look if you came into our office. We would talk to you about what assets do you have? Do you have bank accounts? Do you have stocks? Do you have real property? Do you have a rental property? What does your financial picture look like? And then after the document is created and the trust is signed, which we can get into some of the formalities of that, but once the document is signed, then the second part is retitling your assets to the trust name. Okay. So making sure that everything is moved from either your name as an individual into your individual trust, or husband and wife into your husband and wife marital joint trust. But that's a huge part of this, is making sure that your assets are titled correctly.
Okay. So I guess maybe even to back it up one more step, so there would be obviously some expense to setting up a trust and then putting the things in there. Why would we want to take that step? So obviously we understand generally that it's to help us in estate planning and things like that. But if you sit down with somebody and say, well, I understand you've got this piece of property here, you've got this rental house here, and maybe you have this bank account over here. Here's why we should put this into a trust. How do you lead somebody just generally through, here's the advantage for you of doing that? So
one of the big advantages of having a trust is avoiding probate.
Okay.
So probate, when you pass away, is the court's intervention or the court administered process of transferring someone's assets.
Okay.
So the court gets involved in that. The court appoints a personal representative, someone in charge of making all of those distributions. The beauty of a trust is that you name a successor trustee to handle all of that without the court getting involved. So that's really the big difference. The court doesn't have to get involved with a trust. So you avoid probate. I would say that's one of the number one reasons why trusts are so favorable, is they would avoid probate. And then a few other reasons. So your trust can be as specific as you want it. There can be very detailed instructions on how you want your assets to pass when you're gone. Also, it does plan for incapacity. So your trust would say something along the lines of, if I was to become incapacitated, this is who I want to take over my trust assets while I'm living even.
Okay.
So it's an incapacitation planning tool. Another big thing is that when someone's estate goes through probate when they pass away, that's a public thing. So that's a public thing. So documents get put in the public record. When you have a trust, it's all very private. No one ever knows about it. So that's another benefit to having a trust.
So I guess already what you're explaining to me is, like, there's a lot, because as I understand a little bit, I understand about probate is, number one, that can be very costly, right? Because there's fees and different things, and then you have court intervention. So there's also a lot of time involved in that, right?
Absolutely. So the two big headaches with probate are, one, the time it takes. I mean, it can be a very lengthy process where kind of everything's frozen, your assets are frozen during that time. And then also the cost. So as you kind of mentioned before, there's the upfront cost of creating an estate plan that may include a trust, but that cost of not having that and going through probate is going to be higher on the back end.
You know, the little bit that I keep learning as we dig deeper into this developing your aging plan stuff is that, boy, it sure is less costly to figure this stuff out in advance. So being proactive rather than reactive. And another thing that you brought up that I hadn't really thought about, but when you said about this thing about incapacity, we were in a session, an educational session, and Nancy Deerdorf, who was our operations director, she brought up the thing that most people say, well, like, you know, I know people have strokes, but it's not going to happen to me, or, you know, different things like that, and how we don't think of those. But when you said Incapacitated, I've heard, I remember talking with one of the attorneys in Amy's office who said, Kerry, I have so often met people and families that I wish I could have met 30 days before this happened, because we'd have so many more options to help guide them through this than we are left with because that planning wasn't there.
Right, absolutely. With that, I think that's what we harp most on in our line of work is just being prepared. You know, estate planning can be kind of a scary thing. I think people, you know, maybe don't want to think about it because it's kind of a you know, talking about death and what do I do when I'm gone and my loved ones that I'm leaving behind. People might not want to address those thoughts, but I can tell you that when clients leave our office, the weight that is lifted off of them, it's just the feeling, okay, it's complete, it's done, I've got something. It's a great feeling, and they tell us that all the time. So I think that just being prepared and taking that step, that little nudge of, okay, give our office a call or call in an attorney that can help you, just to get your documents prepared. And it can always, as we're talking here about the revocable trust, it can always be changed. So that's the great thing about it. So even if you leave thinking, you know, most people are, oh great, I got that done, I'm so glad, the weight's lifted off, I'm prepared, if something happens to me, I'm okay. And then 5 years goes by and you decide you want to change it, that's fine. You would just change it, we just amend it.
So that was a question I was going to say, because the little bit I know, I've heard revocable trust and irrevocable trust. And obviously you would be the expert that would help look at somebody's situation and guide them correctly. But why would you choose, or how do you choose, or how do you start to look at those as tools?
So a revocable trust can be changed throughout your life. So it can be amended as many times as you want. Whether it be your beneficiaries or your successor trustee or specific instructions that you include in there, all of that can be changed. So, and as we progress through life, things do change. So, you know, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. My estate plan while I have young kids is going to look different than when they're, you know, 25 and 28 or 25 and 27. So all of that can be changed, which that's a great thing about a revocable trust. An irrevocable trust, on the other hand, can't be changed. Okay. So once that is signed, it is that way. And irrevocable trusts are typically used for when there's a disabled person, for instance, a supplemental needs trust, those are oftentimes irrevocable, or Medicaid planning. So those are kind of some more detailed, specific uses for irrevocable trusts. But the big difference between revocable and irrevocable is revocable can be changed and irrevocable cannot.
Okay. So like when you have this idea, I'm going to set up a trust because that makes sense for some of the reasons we talked about, it would solve this question about all the expense and time of probate, and it would probably help, help with a path if I became incapacitated or something like that. So if somebody says that, what are all the tools that you need to be able to help somebody put that together? What are the things that you need to know from the person sitting across the desk from you?
So usually in a consultation or a telephone call, it can be as formal or informal as someone may want it. But we'll begin to gather information. So do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? Do you have loved ones nearby? What are your assets? What does do you have bank accounts? Do you have real property? And also, who do you want to be in charge of your estate while you're living, or I'm sorry, in charge of your affairs while you're living, should something happen to you, and who would you want to be in charge when you pass away? Oftentimes, it looks the same, like the people will use the same agents on everything, but sometimes it doesn't. So for instance, if we're doing a full estate plan, and you may have the lawyer or accountant child that you want to be on your power of attorney, because that's who would be making a legal or financial decision for you, but then you have the nurse son or daughter or the medical son or daughter that you would put on your healthcare surrogate. So the information that we really need is, who do you want listed on these documents? Who do you feel comfortable? Is it maybe a friend, or do you have no one? And you want us to reach out and do some of that care management, case management. There's companies out there that provide services, and we can do that as well. So definitely who you want to be on your documents, that's important. Who you want, like we're talking about the trust, who you would want to be your trustee. And then of course, who are your beneficiaries? Who do you want to inherit from you when you pass away? Is it a family member? Is it a friend? Is it an organization? So we often ask people, think about the organizations you're members of, or that the charities that you donate to. What is meaningful for you? Who do you want to have your funds when you're gone? So we and sometimes that takes people time. They come into our office and they haven't thought about these things yet, and that's okay. We take this as slow or as fast as the client would want, but it's about thinking, who do I want to take what I've worked so hard for all these years? So those are kind of the things to be thinking about.
And as you're talking about it, I was just going to ask you, when you come to these decisions and you start to work through this, maybe that's one of the reasons we often put this stuff off, because it feels like I have to make all of these decisions. But one of the things that you were just talking about is that it's okay if that process takes a little bit of time, because I guess maybe first somebody has to sit down so that we even know the right questions we need to be thinking about.
Right. And we have people that come in that, it's more of a education consultation, where we're saying, this is what there is that we can offer you. This is what you need. This is what the documents mean. And people can be hesitant, and that's okay. That's okay. We're here to educate. We want you to understand the benefits of all of the documents and why they're needed. We're not just pushing this stuff for some personal agenda.
No, I was going to say, and in particular, Amy and your law firm, you guys have been very generous with your time. You're always involved in like a lot of community where you'll do seminars, and particularly I know that over the years I've heard Amy give talks about VA planning, VA aid and attendance planning, and there's a lot of different things that the average person doesn't know. And I wanted to ask you about this as we're talking about trust, because I've also heard stories of people who will go to all the trouble to make up the paperwork, and so they'll think, well, I've got my whole trust, it's all set up, everything's done, but then they don't, quote, fund it or put the things into the trust, and that kind of negates the whole purpose, right?
It does. So it's so unfortunate when we see it, because our office does probate as well. So we see it after people have passed, where they had this trust and it wasn't properly funded. So it's almost like the trust was useless. You went to all the trouble and the expense of creating it while you were alive, but then not properly funded, it really does you no good. And you're likely going to find yourself in probate anyway. But funding your trust is basically making sure your assets are titled in your trust name. So for instance, if I had the Tyler Runte Revocable Trust, that would be the title on my bank accounts. Tyler Runte, trustee of my trust. Or the deed to my home. That would be the way it would be titled. So our office does do trust funding. So we help with trust funding if that's a service you would like us to provide. Because I think once people get over that hump of, okay, my documents are done, okay, I can just sit back and I'm good now. You do have that little bit of homework of making sure your assets are titled correctly. And we oftentimes work with financial advisors or CPAs, whoever, to make sure that we're collaborating and coordinating to make sure your assets are all titled correctly.
Well, it does sound like it's pretty complex, and that leads me to the topic. I know that, boy, we'll turn on the TV and we'll see commercials that encourage us, oh, you can do this, here's an online service, you can take care of all this stuff yourself. Or oftentimes you can go into like an office supply store and there'll be this, oh, here, do your own paperwork stuff. But to me that seems kind of dangerous, because so much of this seems a little bit high stakes. Like if you get it wrong, it could really cost you money.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. That if you get it wrong, it could be a problem. Or I shouldn't say it could be, it will be a problem.
Wow.
And very, very costly. So we want you to avoid that. We always say, please don't print things offline that you find on the internet and just assume that they're going to be legally accurate. They're going to be executed with the proper formalities. Right. Certain documents need 2 witnesses and a notary, and a lot of these documents you find online, it's just got a signature at the bottom where you sign, you think you're good, but that's not what Florida law requires.
Wow.
And they can also be very vague, not having the correct Florida statutory language in there, especially revolving around homestead. Florida has some particular homestead laws, and our trusts speak to those. Okay. So when you get these ones offline, you or, that might not be in there, which is going to be costly, and it's just going to be a lot of paperwork and a headache.
And that actually leads me to kind of like a corollary point. We have the blessing of living here in Florida. And of course, these programs, the Helping Seniors TV programs, we broadcast these locally here on Space Coast Government TV, but they're also available like on a YouTube channel. We have a Helping Seniors of Brevard YouTube channel. And then we also have a page on Facebook, Helping Seniors of Brevard, and they have a service called Facebook Watch. And so all of these TV programs go there. So we will occasionally get calls, not occasionally, I'd say actually more frequently, we'll get calls from relatives, like adult kids, who have their mom or dad or uncle or aunt or somebody living in our area, but they're up in the Midwest or they're up in the Northeast, and they're calling saying, hey, I saw this and I'm curious about this. But then there's a lot of people who are down here that are snowbirds, and there's also a lot of people moving into our state. Our state is, it's almost like a magnet because everybody moves to Florida. And I was thinking, like, what if you're a person that you had set stuff up, but maybe you spent your working years, someplace up north? Does all that work when you get down here, or do you need somebody to help you sort it out and look through?
So we definitely say have an attorney look at it. So if you had all your documents done in another state and you moved to Florida, absolutely you want to have an attorney review it, make sure that it's compliant with Florida laws and has the Florida statutes in there. If it doesn't, we can always amend it to include those. So we do that often. Like you say, with so many people moving to Florida, we do that very, very frequently, where we'll review documents from another state and then just update them so that they're compliant with Florida law. So it's not, a redo, and all of that trust funding that you may have already done, hopefully already done, that's all fine. We don't have to touch that because we still use your same trust. So the name doesn't change, none of the particulars change, unless you want them to, of course, while we're amending. If you want us to change those particulars, we can. But the name doesn't change, so you don't have to unwind any of that trust funding. So it's not too complicated of a process. But we do say make sure you have an attorney review it, because you don't want Ohio laws in your Florida trust.
Right, because that to me, as like a kind of a novice about this, it really makes sense, right? Because you think you had everything buttoned up, and the problem with all of this, right, is that the moment you need it to work right, it's not like you have an opportunity to do a do-over. You're stuck with whatever you had, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you want to get it right. That's why we say, please don't print these things offline or have us review if you move here, just because you want it to be right. It's not worth the headaches that are on the back end if you don't have it right.
Yeah, and I guess so a takeaway for me for us talking about this today is that this conversation we're having about trust is far more applicable to all of us average folks that we're just trying to figure out to do the right things for our family. So it's not really just for folks that are high net worth individuals. I would imagine if you have a house and a bank account, it probably makes sense to at least have the visit and say, is this something I should be talking to you about?
Yes, absolutely, yep.
And then particularly, I guess as I've heard this too, over time, maybe you had documents done years ago living up north, during your working years, and you come down here and enjoy the sunshine of Florida, but maybe stuff that you had planned then has shifted. Somebody got married, somebody's no longer in the picture, whatever kinds. You probably run into a lot of that too.
We do, and it's so nice when people, get their dusty estate planning documents out and review them, because it's not, necessarily the funnest read, but it is necessary. So we tell people, when you leave our office, please don't forget about us. Every few years, get your documents out and review them to make sure the names are all still accurate. Things have changed, have things changed? Do you need updates? Right. And your documents can be so particular to the point of, you want your son to inherit, but you want him only to receive $1,000 a month for the rest of his life, or whatever. Or maybe you want drug tests, or you want him to have completed college before he gets a lump sum. Some of those things over time are going to change. If he's already graduated college, then that's a moot point at this, So we definitely say, take them out, look at them, see if anything needs to be changed. And that's not a complex thing either. We can make whatever changes are necessary.
Wow, it's very encouraging. And I want to thank you for kind of having broken this down in a way that we can access. You guys, again, through the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, you guys really take a lot of time. If somebody wants to look at a website, I know you guys have a website and you have a lot of resources there that are useful. How do people find you guys online?
Yes, so the number is 321-345-5945. That's our phone number. And then online would be amybvanfossen.com. We do hold free seminars as well, so you can call our office to schedule for one of those.
Yeah, and to me it sounds like a really good way to kind of like put your toe in the water, and I think as you get more comfortable with some of the terminology, it's going to encourage you to take the next step to make sure that you really are protecting your family. And it's almost like it's a peace of mind thing that you do for your loved ones, right?
Absolutely, yes. People all the time are saying, I just don't want this to be a problem for my kids, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And likewise for the kids, push your parents or prompt them to get this done, just so it's easier for everyone.
Yeah, everybody knows what, how you want it to roll.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's good. So thank you, Tyler Runte with the law office, attorney with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. Your expertise is wills and trusts. And so again, real quickly, the phone number one more time if somebody wants to call.
Sure, 321-345-5945, and the website is amybvanfossen.com.
All right. Well, thank you, viewer, for joining us on today's edition of Helping Seniors TV. You can find all these programs archived on the helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. You'll find lots of good resources to help you develop your own aging plan. Let's get your ducks in a row. I'm Kerry Fink on behalf of Helping Seniors, the organization, Helping Seniors TV. And so on behalf of Joe Steckler, our president founder, our entire team, volunteers, staff team, everybody, thank you for joining us today on Helping Seniors.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we would welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.